Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our live. We will hopefully have one of our speakers join us by voice, if not by video. So I will start with introductions. My name is Anna. I work as an organizer for South Carolina Appleseed Legal Justice Center. Yvonne, will you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Ivan Segura. I'm the program manager for the Hispanic Latino Affairs Division at the South Carolina Commission for Minority Affairs.
And Nina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nina Cano Richards, and I'm an immigration attorney here in Charleston with Cano Law. And I'm also involved with several local organizations here, including the Mayor's Latinx Advisory Council for the City of Charleston, as well as the American Immigration Lawyers Association.
And Angelique, if you can hear us, would you introduce yourself as well?
I am Angelique Jarvis-Simmons, and I have worked I'm a community leader and volunteer in Greenville and Spartanburg counties.
Great, we were able to hear you, so hopefully we keep you on this time.
All right. I can't see anyone, but I can hear you.
Great. So for Voces Comunitarias, we thought it was really important to do at least some basics on what it is to vote, how to vote safely, and kind of talk about what is important to be involved in the future, including for those people who can't vote. So we've got some basic questions that we are going to go over. And then at the end, if anybody has any questions, we'll have time for that. And I also will do another call for videos if you haven't already heard of our video contest. So let's start. Yvonne, will you start us off? Who is eligible to vote?
To be eligible to vote, you have to be basically an American citizen and be at least 18 years old by the date of the time of the election. And it's important to say it like that because, right now everybody's talking about this election. Everybody's talking about November the 3rd, but remember, your right to vote, you can exercise it anytime and all the time. So if it's the next one, just remember that if you are going to be 18, by the time the election is going to happen, then you're eligible to vote. Something important, and I know we're going to talk about that, is you have to be registered to vote, and everything has dates, and that's part of the conversation that we're having right now. It's to be able to go to vote, you have to be registered, and there is a deadline before the election that you have to register by that deadline, and it's a whole process. But to answer your question, if you are an American citizen, and if you're 18 years old by the time of the election, then you are eligible to vote.
Another thing to add in there, Anna, if I can, is just, as an immigration attorney, I'm always thinking about my clients and the all kinds of immigration status that everybody has, right? And a lot of the times it's kind of confusing to know whether you are a U.S. citizen or not, right? But just to be clear, if you have a green card, you are not a U.S. citizen. If you have a work permit, you are not a U.S. citizen. And if you register to vote and you are not a U.S. citizen, it can be detrimental to your immigration status and also, your future eligibility to vote. So just be really careful about that. If you have a U.S. passport, if you have a U.S. birth certificate, if you have a U.S. naturalization certificate, all three of those are evidence that you are a U.S. citizen and you are eligible to vote.
And to drive the point that Yvonne said, you don't have to be 18 to register. That's very important. You have to be 18 by November the 3rd on the day that you vote. But it will not keep you from registering if you're not 18 yet.
Yes, all very important information. So, Angelique, how do I register to vote?
There are three ways that you can register. You can go in person to your county registration office, and there's a deadline. So these are important and they're right on us. So to say that today you need to go and register today, I'm not exaggerating. So you can go in person, you can fill out the registration form. You can also do it online if you have a laptop, even on your cell phone, go online, register. You have until October the 4th. And then you also have the option of sending it in by mail. So you can get online. If you have a printer at home, print off, the registration form and send it in the mail. The postmark needs to show October the 5th, no later than October the 5th. So again, register as soon as possible. There are deadlines. If you miss the deadlines, you will not be able to vote, and your vote is important.
Thank you, Angelique. And I think it's really important. Like she said, remember, today you can go out and do that. So if you aren't registered to vote already, today is the day. So we have another question, but I think I'm going to fold it into our next question, which is for Nina. How do I vote?
Okay, so once you are registered to vote, and if you were registered in the past, something else to bring up, Anna, is if you were registered in the past election or the election before that, make sure that you check to make sure your voter registration information is updated, that your address is current. If you have moved from, the last election period, you have to update your information with voter registration with the Election Commission. So make sure you do that first. But once you are registered to vote, once your information's been updated, from that point, you're going to have to decide, how do I vote? And you can either choose to vote in person or you can choose to vote absentee. If you vote in person, it's going to be important for you to be ready. And I don't know if you wanted me to go into what you have to bring in if you're voting in person.
You can go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So if you're voting in person, make sure you bring your ID. You're going to have either your South Carolina driver's license, your voter registration card with your photo on it. If you're military, a federal military ID card, U.S. passport, some form of government identification showing who you are. In this election time, it's also going to be a little bit different than in the past, right? So make sure you take your mask. Make sure you take a light snack. If you can, bring a book. There might be a little bit longer of waiting lines since we've seen in the past because of this COVID situation that we have going. So please make sure that you're ready if you choose to vote in person, that you're ready to, kind of go through that process. As long as you are in line by 7 o'clock at night on November 3rd, you will be eligible to vote. If you get there 7:01, they're not going to let you. But as long as you are in line by 7 o'clock, you will be able to vote. So, it's important to arrive early if at all possible. So if you've decided to vote in person, you've got your mask, you've got your ID, you're ready to go, make sure that you check your polling location before you leave your house. Because of COVID, several of the locations have had to close and those precincts are being allocated to other precincts. So it's important for you to, make sure that you're going to the right polling location to vote. So definitely check that before you go. So that is what you're going to have to do if you're voting in person. You can also choose, because of COVID, everybody in South Carolina is now eligible to vote absentee, which is the second option that you can choose to take. You can choose to vote absentee in two ways. You can either choose to vote absentee by mail, or you can choose to vote absentee early. What this means is if you choose to vote absentee early, you'll be able to go in and vote anywhere between starting October 5th until November 3rd at one of the absentee voting locations, the early voting locations set up by the Election Commission. So if you choose to vote early, you'll be able to have that opportunity after October 5th and before November 3rd. You can also choose to vote by mail. So when you are requesting your application for the absentee ballot, they will send you, once the Election Commission processes that, they will send you your absentee ballot in the mail. You can check off who you want to vote for, make sure you research your candidates, and you can either send that ballot back by mail, you can choose to drop it off at your county election office, or you can bring it in to one of the polling boxes that are going to be set up. So there's several ways to get this done, but the most important thing I want you guys to remember is you can either choose to vote in person, early or on November 3rd, or you can choose to vote by mail, okay?
And Anna, if I can add something in there that is important, especially because we hear this in our community all the time now, that people are asking, because a lot of people in the community are not familiar with the absentee voting. They're asking, like, hey, how is this process? How do I need to do it? But what the most important question is always like, is my vote gonna count? And we have to tell them yes. Remember, what Nina is explaining is like, it doesn't matter how you vote. Your vote is still gonna count the same, which is one vote for each of the candidates. You can send it through the mail. You can go to the Elections Commission's office before, or you can wait until the day of the election. But that's something that we keep trying to tell our community, inform them that any of the process that you choose, your vote is going to count the same. So go ahead. If you're concerned about going on election day because there's going to be a lot of people there, request your absentee ballot. If you are concerned about your absentee ballot not going to make it there on the mail, then go to the office before and tell them. And that's something that the governor just declared that everybody, because of the state of emergency, everybody has the right to vote absentee. And that's what we keep informing the community for the same reason that I just mentioned. A lot of times they are not very familiar with the process. A lot of times they are just concerned that their vote is not going to count or something is going to happen. Just remind them that, yes, your vote is going to count. That's why the most important thing is for you to vote. Anyway, somehow, but vote.
And the way that you request your absentee ballot and you can register to vote as well on this website is scvotes.gov. So I know we didn't mention that earlier, but that is the website that you should follow or go on to get some of that election commission information. So I think this is also a good segue. Where, and Angelique, maybe you can answer this if you're still with us. How can I figure out who is running and who I should vote for? And obviously, we're not telling you who exactly you should be voting for. We're just trying to give you general information. So, Angelique, can you answer that question for us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, there are a couple of things. If first of all, if you know what party you want to belong to or already belong to, you would notify or contact, I shouldn't say notify, you would contact that office to learn more about your candidate. You can also certainly search your party's website for information about your candidate. We certainly see a lot of advertising, but as you say, it's important to learn about your candidate, and the information is available, whether it's the candidate site itself, whether it's the party site, or whether you just simply Google. And I'm sure some of you can add more to that.
Yeah, Nina or Richard, you want to?
Yeah, so on that same website, scvotes.gov, you guys can put in your address and download a sample ballot, which will contain all of the local, state, and federal candidates that are up for election. And so just based on that sample ballot, you know, you can, like we were saying earlier, research each individual candidate. All of them should have either a website for their party or for their individual platform. So make sure to check those out.
And it's important to stress too that this is not just this is a general election, and in the state of South Carolina, there is a Senate seat. So it's important to know that it's not, you would not just see the presidential candidate on the ballot. You will see other candidates on the ballot.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that it's not just Senate and president as well. You know, there's more local candidates, and I think we had mentioned in our Spanish version that, you know, sheriff might be on your ballot. Each county, maybe even each district might have different people running for office. So it's important to check out your ballot, especially if you're going to be voting in person. So go ahead and download your sample ballot, check out, Google them, you know, see what they're running for. Maybe check out Vote 411 if see if they've answered some of the questions that I know they usually ask them. So do your research, and that's really helpful. Or if you are, you know, if you're getting your sample ballot in the mail, I think Nina mentioned this in the Spanish version as well. It's good to you'll have the list already, you know, there, and you can then take your time and Google them there. But sometimes it's good to just go ahead and get that research, look at their campaign website or whatever, Vote 411 and do that research.
And I really can't stress enough about doing the research. We really have to look, because the decisions we make November the 3rd will have effects way later on down the road. It is important to know the candidate's history and their platform and how it aligns with yours. It's important to do the research. It may take a few extra minutes, but isn't our future important enough to take those extra minutes to research?
Ivan, do you want to add?
No, I just wanted to mention like what just Angelique mentioned, which is it's good to know the platforms, because that means if somebody gets elected, then you can hold them accountable to that. Hold them accountable to the promises that they make on the campaign, just to know what they stand for instead of just deciding by the name or anything different. It's very important. That's what a community that's engaged on the civic process does. Like you are voting according to what you investigated through them, and that's what you have the opportunity to do right now.
Okay, so we made it to election. We've done our research. We've decided that we wanted to vote in person. What if I have problems at the polls? Ivan, you want to start us off with that one?
Nina is the lawyer, so she knows that information better than me.
Well, the good news is that there are voter protection units set up across the state. There's a lot of interest, not only by the legal community, but just by general volunteers that want to make sure that your vote is protected. With all of, the COVID craziness and the changing policies, we really want to make sure that all of your votes count. So, one of the things that you can do is if you, get to election day, you're voting in person, and for some reason you forget your ID at home, or there's some kind of, problem with your ability to vote, ask the poll worker at that time if you're eligible for a provisional ballot, okay? A provisional ballot, isn't a regular vote, but if there's an election that's super close, they will look at all of the provisional ballots, to see how that affects it. So it's, make sure to at least ask for your provisional ballot. But before you leave, before you get in your car and drive home, if there's something that you see that concerns you, if something happened to you that concerns you, make sure you call those voter protection hotlines. And Anna, I'm sure is going to post the number down there in the chat, but on the day of elections, you can call that 1-800 hotline. I just let them know, like, hey, I had a problem because I didn't have my ID, or hey, I had a problem because there were people that were bothering me and telling me that I didn't have the right to vote. Make sure that you report those things. It's really important to keep reports of all all those things happening. And if you need help in Spanish, there is help in Spanish. I'll actually be one of the volunteers helping with voter protection on election day. So make sure you reach out. We'll be there to help.
And then there's also another national hotline too. But look into it. There's local ones, there's national ones. So whatever you feel most comfortable with, just reach out. I mean, that's really.
Anna, to second that, what I wanted to say too is that we know that there might be some issues. That some people might have a problem to vote or something. But as community leaders, what we're trying to do is just make sure that it was just one instance, but there is not something repetitive that's happening over and over again. Because then if we need to make changes, if we need to propose changes, we'll go ahead and do that. But I think what Nina is talking about is the people that have issues, please report them, because those agencies that are to protect the vote are trying to determine if this is actually a one instance that happened here, or it's a concerted effort to suppress the vote. And that's what we need, that information, so we can then propose changes.
And there are also poll monitors that walk up and down the line. And just like Nina was saying, that at 7:01, if you arrive at 7:01, no one, you won't be allowed to vote. And that is because there are poll monitors, and they keep up and keep track, and they walk up and down the line. So, if you're experiencing any kind of aggression from anyone else around you, call it to the attention of the poll monitor at that moment. Don't leave because you feel intimidated. Your vote counts. You have a right to stand there. You are a registered voter, so do not be intimidated. Call the attention to the poll monitor and let them handle it.
Yes. So how about after the elections? I think that's also important too. how can people stay involved after the elections? And Angelique, let's start with you.
Well, I say, reach out to your elected officials. During the COVID-19, I reached out to the mayor of Greenville. I reached out to the councilman in the area where the Hispanic population, where it's the most heavily populated in Greenville County. So go to your elected leaders when you have issues. And if you want to, and not only when you have issues, tell them you want to be involved. Ask them how you can help. Because sometimes they're not aware of the issues, because we have a tendency in our Hispanic community to take care of problems ourselves within our community. But with COVID-19, we saw that was a situation that got out of our hands, that we could not, and we needed outside help. And that means that we go to the people that can do something about it. And that is your elected officials. Make them aware of the issues going on. See how you can assist. Be involved. Don't be afraid. If you're a citizen, you have every right. You don't have to belong to a committee or an organization to have a voice. You have every right to speak up and ask how you can help or bring attention to an issue that needs to be addressed.
I love what you said, Angelique. Yeah, totally on point there. I think a lot of the people that are going to be watching our English broadcast of the video are going to be a lot of our allies, right? A lot of the people that are thinking of the immigrant community at the time that they cast their ballot. And, to those allies, my message would be after the election is, like Angelique said, keep that pressure on. There's a lot of, things that happened in our community these past couple of years that, that have affected us, whether it's COVID or whether it's immigration policies. You all, if you're a voter and a constituent, you have the right to reach out to your representative. So, make sure you exercise that right. It's just as important as voting day.
Yeah, and what I love to say in these times is that, remember, we are electing them to work for us. They work for us. And if you pay taxes in America, guess what? That's the money that they are using to pay the elected officials. They are public servants, and they are there to serve the public. And I keep reminding people that remember, that's why, like Angelique said, you don't have to belong to an organization. You don't have to have a position important. You can just request a hearing with your representative and tell them, hey, we need to tell you about the needs of our community. And this is something where everybody participates. And I know not everybody has the ability or will dare just to stand in front of a senator, but then talk to your community leaders, your community brokers, and let's get somebody that can actually talk to them. Let's do a forum in my community, or simply just speak up and reach out to somebody and say, hey, we have this issue in our community. How do we make sure that that issue gets elevated to either locally or the municipality or the district or the state? And that's why, all politics is local. And the elections that we're having right now is very, very important because it's a presidential election. But don't worry, next year we'll have the opportunity to vote again. And a lot of times when you vote for something local, like a sheriff, like a mayor, like a board trustee or one of those positions, those are the ones that are going to affect your locality a lot more. And I like also what Nina said, that we are hoping that we have more allies that will understand the issues in the Hispanic communities and help us vote for the people that are also aware of those issues.
And another thing that I wanted to mention is that something that I myself learned was that the president may make a mandate, but then you've got the governor, and then you even have your city, your mayor. So we have to have a close relationship or a close understanding, a better understanding of, local, state, and federal government.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. And I think, again, with the, this year we have an election, next year we'll have an election. There's local elections every year, they're primaries. So I think that's important, that a lot of people just vote in the presidential elections. And it's important to know and realize that there are other elections that impact us just as much, if not more, that will also be happening. And sometimes you just don't hear as much about them, but they're still just as important. So stay involved, pay attention, keep listening, and stay involved. So the last question that I have, and hopefully if you have any other questions, please put them in our comments and we will get back to you. But how can I be involved if I can't vote? Anybody, feel free to take this question.
You can still volunteer. You can still get out there and hand out flyers. You can still, you can bring information to government officials. It doesn't matter if you can vote or not. You still see what's going on in your community, and you can still be the voice of the community.
And yeah, what I would say is, like, remember, like, if you don't yet have the right to vote. Maybe your immigration status is in transition. Maybe you are about to submit your citizenship application. But remember, you're still part of this community, and you belong in that community. And that's why it's important when Angelique just said, get involved, speak up, volunteer, go to the places, learn about the process, how everything works. Because sometimes it's just as simple as one phone call. When something is coming down the line and it's going to be a legislation about it, all you have to do is call your legislator and say, hey, I live here in this community. I pay taxes in this community. They pay you your salary from those taxes, which means I'm affected by this decision. And this is what I think about the issue at hand. And that's why, like, the more people that express their what's going on in their minds is the better picture that these legislators are going to get. Either, remember, they are public servants. It could be your mayor, your sheriff, your state representative, your federal representative. But if we don't speak up, they don't get the news of what's happening in our communities. And Angelique also mentioned that, like, sometimes we tend to just isolate ourselves and don't speak out and say, well, that's where we're trying to break the tradition of, like, let's just put the Hispanic community here, or the Latinx communities. Like, let's also tell the other communities what our issues are so we can all work together.
Yeah, and I would also add, Anna, you know, in addition to volunteering your time and in addition to reaching out to your representatives, that we use our voices to speak out about our stories, right? We, like Yvonne said, we live in a community. We live in, you know, Charleston, South Carolina, and within that, within our colleges, within our places of employment. So talk to your coworkers, talk to your friends, talk to your classmates. Let them know what issues are, you know, at issue this election for Latinos. You know, why are Latinos affected 4 times as harshly with COVID in South Carolina? You know, these are important questions to ask, not only, you know, to ourselves, to our representatives, but also to the people in our community, so they can keep, you know, the larger community in mind, and not, you know, and keep our issues in mind too.
Yeah, and Ivani mentioned before in the Spanish version too, you know, there are programs out there like Adopt a Voter, you know, like, make sure that you talk to your family, your spouse, or whoever it is that can vote, and make sure that they are going out and you know, practicing that civic duty, that right that they have. Whether, you know, whatever it may be that you can't vote, whether you know, that is keeping you from voting, you know, use that as a way to, you know, talk to other people and say, well, because of my whatever reason, you should vote, you know, for me and for our community and whatnot. So,
and that's something we've been promoting a lot. Like what Nina said, you know, if you cannot vote, then find somebody that has that right and convince him why it's important. Because sadly, we still have a lot of people that do not vote. And we wish that every single people with the right to vote would exercise that vote and go and vote. But then, if nothing else, what you can do is that friend, that person that you work with, the person that you go to school with, and just tell them, hey, you know, I want to share with you the needs and the issues of my community, and I want to encourage you to go and vote because we need representation, and you have to understand the importance of the voting for this democracy that we have.
and so I think we've answered that question pretty well. If you know, if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. But as I don't see any questions, I see some really great information. Thank you all for sharing that. I will say that one question that just occurred to me that I think is a good question to answer, and hopefully somebody here knows, just be that the Latino community is very intersectional. And so one community that I want to highlight is people with disabilities. So if somebody, wants to vote in person and it has a disability, what do you guys know what the process is for them to vote?
As soon as they get to the polling location, that person should go and look for a poll worker, somebody at the front of the line that has a badge on that looks like they're working there, and let them know that either you're handicapped or you're helping somebody who's handicapped, and they should be able to help you along the way.
Thanks, Nina.
And of course, they can also consider like absentee voting, like, because I think that's one of the valid reasons. Because this year, again, like you don't need a valid reason. Usually, like if you have an issue with getting yourself to the polls on that day, then you can vote absentee. And you're right when you say like, and that's something we've been trying to work in all these minorities within our minority, and pay special attention to people, for example, in Latinos in rural areas, Latinos that don't speak English, Latinos that live in, they are just in the process or just became citizens that don't understand the process, and just trying to make sure that our program to inform people about the election process include all those little and we don't forget, and we just think like, hey, let's just put another in English and that's done. It's like, no, you have to take that extra step to understand the differences between our communities, the older people, the younger people, the first generation immigrants, the zero generation like me that I moved from Mexico to here, the ones that were born in here, the ones that have been here for 5 years against the ones that have been here for 25 years. And all of that is everything that we take into consideration when developing an effective program to do civic education for Latinx people.
Well, I think we're coming up on time. I think we're a little bit over what time I think we were hoping to do, but we had a little bit of technical difficulties and whatnot. So thank you all for listening in, for joining us, for for commenting. Please register to vote if you haven't. Please go out to vote if you're already registered on November 3rd or beforehand through absentee. Also, we are doing a project, Voces Comunitarias is doing a project, a voter video contest. So please send in your videos by this Friday if you'd like to enter. There is a monetary prize, but if you just want to do it from the bottom of your heart, please send in those videos. We want to encourage other people to go out to vote, and you are the best person to encourage other people to do so. So please, if you can or can't vote, it doesn't matter. What we want is just a video about why voting is important. So you can go back through our other Voces Comunitarias posts and you will find the guidelines. You'll find the email, which is my email actually, anna@scjustice.org. And I can put that in the chat as well, to email, and hopefully we'll have some really great videos to share next week. So register to vote, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for joining us on Voter Registration Day. Bye. And thank you to our speakers. I don't think I've thanked them, but thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Nina.
Bye.
Thank you, Angelique, for being with us.
You.
And Rich for being our background person. Thank you all. Bye.